Next, please welcome Doug Meetup leader and Microsoft MVP, Rami Mounla. Today, he'll be presenting his session, Mastering Power Platform ALM. Please stick around after Rami's session for a live Q&A.
Good morning and good afternoon. I am Rami. I'm joining you all the way from New Zealand today. It is 10 a.m. here in New Zealand. So it's a good time, and then it's nice and sunny outside, but you guys cannot see that. We're in spring, so leading to summer. So probably in the US, you guys have, or the Northern Hemisphere at least, you've got different seasons. But I'm super excited to be joining you guys today. And we've got quite a lot to talk about. My topic today is going to be about the Power Platform ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. And I've done that session before at DynamicsCon. However, this is going to be new content. So every time I do that session, I always introduce something new. And then this time, I actually revamped the entire conversation. So we've got some really, really cool stuff that I'm going to be demonstrating. This is stuff that is either in private preview or public preview, recently gone into public preview, and hopefully we'll go into GA in the near future. All right, so the agenda for today, I'm just going to start by introducing a little bit about myself and then tell you what my background is. Talk a little bit about some of the projects that I've worked on that had a big impact on the community in New Zealand specifically, but also on my career and the way I do my work on a usual basis. I'll go and cover some of the different disciplines that are available out there, specifically around ALM, and what are the different things that we should look at. And then we'll start talking about different capabilities within the Azure DevOps capabilities, and then how we can integrate that with Dynamics 365. Have a look at where AI comes in. There's some really cool features that have been introducing recently. And the Git integration is something that I want to focus on. So this is the element that is in public preview at the moment. It actually was officially announced on Monday, so just 3 days ago. And the capabilities in there are, absolutely insane in terms of how far you can think and how far you can get the most out of that capability. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then we have, based on that, there's a little bit of transition in terms of how we can do a code-first approach. So building your solutions without an environment, and then we'll have a look at some demos in between all of that. But as mentioned, first, I'm going to talk about some of my experiences, and then one of the larger projects that I've worked on, which is the passport application processing project for the Department of Internal Affairs in New Zealand. So the name of the project is Te Ara Manaki. This is a Maori word. In New Zealand, we've got 3 official languages. We've got English, we've got Maori, and we've got sign language. I speak one of them, barely, but the words Te Ara Manaki are actually a combination of a vision of what they had for that specific project. So when we say in Maori, Te Ara, that means the pathway, the life that you're going to lead if you want. And Manaki means care, cherishing. So caring, cherishing the pathway that a human being is going to have, or a New Zealand citizen would have throughout their life. And this vision was absolutely enlightening when we started on that project. And we looked at the imagery on how they want to run that project. It's actually supporting the New Zealand citizens. And then, as you can see on the name of the passport, it says New Zealand passport, Urufenua, and then it says Aotearoa. Aotearoa means the land of the white cloud, which is a translation of New Zealand in the Maori language. The reason why I want to bring that up is because we introduced a lot of really advanced capabilities when we were building that specific solution. It's based on the Power Platform. It uses Dynamics 365 customer service, but it also has Power Pages on the front end for the citizens to go in and then submit their applications. But also on the back end, you would have capabilities such as Power Automate, all the custom connectors that integrates with the official registers that are available at the Department of Internal Affairs, and so on. Now, just to give you a scale of how many applications we process per day, So we receive 1,500 passport applications per day. And then sometimes, if it's high season, then we can get beyond that. The application should be able to process 2,000 applications on a day, or in peak periods, maybe 2,500, 3,000 applications per day. So when I actually went and had a look at how they process those applications, it was literally floors and floors of official officers that are in front of their screens using Dynamics 365 and then processing the application. So it was paramount for us to ensure that we've got the most efficient way of processing those applications. And that made me think. We spend a lot of time trying to improve our customers' experiences, trying to reduce processing time, trying to make their life easier. But what about us? What about us as developers? What about us as consultants who are actually building those applications? Did we ever stop and have a look at our process, our ALM process, and think, all right, what are the areas where we're spending a lot of time, either because it's laborious, or is it because there's a lot of rework involved in that space, or there is room for improvement, automation, and other bits? And look at that as a process and then think, all right, how we can improve on that capabilities. So throughout that journey, I actually went to the official Learn Microsoft website and I had a look at all their applications about ALM. And then the one thing that I noticed is that there is that nice visualization in here. So in the past, I used the Infinity, looked at the Infinity logo that had the dev on the one side and the ops on the other side to talk about DevOps. And I talked about all the different elements. But I thought, all right, this time I'm going to use the official Microsoft documentation. I'm going to take a screenshot from their documentation, and I'm going to display it in here just so that people can visualize all the different bits that we're going to talk about. And then this is the screenshot. So I decided, all right, let's touch it up a little bit, make it a little bit prettier, use some nice colors. And then this is the process that I'm going to be talking about throughout my presentation. You're going to have a look at the planning side of things, the development, the build and test, the deployment, the operation, and the monitoring. Some of the elements I'm not going to spend too much time on because in a way they are not very relevant to the talk that I'm doing right now, or they're relatively trivial and slightly outside of the Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform realm. So I'll highlight which section I'm talking about, and then we'll go and have a look at it throughout the presentation. So the reason why I say that my presentation is significantly different than what I've done in the past is because earlier this week, it was, late last week on Saturday US time, I was presenting at another conference called the Low Code, No Code conference. And over there, my topic was process mining. So I went through the capabilities of Power Automate process mining, which, by the way, if you have not heard about it, it's a hidden gem. Go and have a look at it, play around with the tutorials that are available on the learn.microsoft.com, and then you'll be able to see that it will add a lot of value to your day-to-day work. In a nutshell, what you do is you ingest data into your environment, and you say, all right, well, those are the different activities that I do. And by the way, I do them many times. I correlate them to, let's say, an application ID or a case ID. And then this is when I start each one of those activities and then end each one of those activities. Based on the information, this capability for the process mining generates a nice graph that shows you how many instances did you run of that entire process, how did it branch, and where there is rework. So as you can see over there, there's a little bit of rework that is involved in invoicing, for example. And then they thought, all right, maybe what we need to do is introduce a little bit of validation so that we don't have that rework 100 times that we're doing rework in that space. Maybe a little bit of validation up front will avoid, a third or 2/3 of the applications going through that loop in here. And I thought, as I was doing that presentation, and I was also thinking about the DynamicsCon presentation on ALM, I'm like, okay, well, how about we just pause for a second and think about our day-to-day work, all the different things that we do on the build perspective, gathering information, from a requirements perspective, generating some content, deploying code, testing that code, and then how much time do we spend on each one of those activities? And how much rework do we have, like, delivering poor quality into a test environment, and then testers having to send the work back to the developers to do a little bit of rework and going into that loop? How about we introduce some validation up front to avoid that rework capability? How about we look at, where we can automate some of the work that we're doing? So as an example, we spend a lot of time building schema. That schema is relatively manual, and you're at the mercy of using the maker portal, make.powerapps.com. You go in there, and then you have to click on the solution. You have to click on create a new table. You wait for it to load. You put in the information, and then you click on save. You create another attribute. You wait for it to load. You click on save, and then you carry on for multiple attributes. How about we automate that capability? And this is possible today. And then I'm going to walk you through some of the ideas about how we can do that. All right. So I have one message for you guys today, and it's the following. If you want to master ALM and the Power Platform, start with baby steps. It's very important not to get overwhelmed with all the capabilities that are available out there and want to solve world hunger just by looking at all the different features that are enabled in there. But what you can do is start in very small baby steps, go through it methodically, and then every week, every sprint, every month, try to improve a little bit on your process. And that's how you would eventually get to a point where you have a mature methodology that you can use moving forward. With all of that, let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm Rami, based in New Zealand, as I mentioned. I am based in Wellington, which is the political capital of New Zealand. So a lot of my customers are in the public sector. And that gives you an appreciation of the scale of the projects that we run, but also the type of solutions that we build. So I work for a little company called DXC. DXC is a global company, actually. It's available everywhere in the world, and it's based in the US. And they gave me the opportunity to work on some of those other larger projects that enabled me to go and think outside of the box and think, all right, well, we've got a limited budget, although it's a generous budget. How about we spend some of that budget on improving our capabilities so that overall, on the long run, given that most of my projects are 3 to 4 years long, we have an increase in velocity and quick speed of delivery. Some of the other work that I do, as it was mentioned in the introduction, I am the Wellington Power Platform user group leader. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now, starting from the Dynamics CRM 4.0 days all the way to the online versions and Dynamics 365, and then going on strong today. And throughout my journey, I wrote a little book called the Dynamics 365 Extensions. It is getting a little bit outdated at the moment, but I wrote it so that the content that is in it is a little bit timeless, so that I don't have to, rewrite a new edition, but probably is worth updating it. One thing that I also want to mention, is that I am TOGAF certified. TOGAF is more for enterprise architecture, which means that the content in there is not necessarily technology driven. And usually people don't talk about the context of TOGAF within the Dynamics and Power Platform capabilities. It's just a small component of it. But what I really like about it is that it has something called the maturity model. And in there, you would select a specific capability. So in this example, it's the Business Transformation Readiness Assessment maturity model. And in there, you would go and rank yourself, rank your organization. Where do you sit on that maturity model? Are you more or less a beginner? And I don't like to use actually beginner and intermediate and expert, but more about a capability. Is it something that we're familiar with? Is it something that we do ad hoc? Is it something that is, quite repeatable and well-defined that we do in organization? Is it something that is managed, or is it something that we actually optimize? So we run the organization based on that capability, and it is optimized. It was truly something that we can go further with. So with that in mind, I thought, all right, how about we create a maturity model for the DevOps and ALM capabilities? And this is the ideas that I came up with. So level 1 is not defined, level 1 is ad hoc, level 2 is defined, and level 3 is optimized. And on the left-hand side, we have all those disciplines, all the different things that we do from a ALM perspective, starting from the builds, the deployments, version controlling, solution layering, understanding the capability, source control integration, environment control, and so on. So all of those are different disciplines, and this is just a selection, just a few ideas. And then you would go and define what does that entire landscape look like. Where are you, for example, from a deployment perspective? Where are you from an environment control perspective? And also, what is your target? Again, start with baby steps. Where do you want to start? Where are you right now? Do that assessment. Understand where you see value based on, as I mentioned previously, process mining, right? So, for example, our deployments are taking too long. They're manual. Okay, this is where we stand right now. Those are the different things that we can do to improve it, to go to level 1, level 2, level 3. This is our target. Maybe going to optimize might be a little bit of a stretch goal, might be too expensive and would not justify the return on investment. Let's settle for level 2 and let's work towards that as our primary goal. And then later on, you would look at another element that is causing you grief in your SDLC, in your ALM, and then focus on that and progress it. So going back now to our wheel, let's have a look at all the different things. The first one is plan and track. Again, this one is not necessarily something that is really big in the Dynamics and Power Platform, so I'll skim through it really quickly, but it's all about ensuring that you have a strong backlog. You identify what is the fit in terms of what can be delivered out of the box, what is the gap that you need to build, and based on that, you start populating your backlog. Starting from epics, features, and user stories, depending on whether you're using Scrum or using Waterfall, you might have slightly different terminology. But at the end of the day, and I jokingly say, there's always that orange, the purple, and the blue story. And then based on that, you go and populate your content in terms of what is it that we're trying to build. I don't have any amazing silver bullet hints in here in terms of how we can improve that process and make it faster. But what I can say is that, leverage the tools that are available out there, be it Azure DevOps, be it Jira, be it, whatever tool of choice that you've got in there, and introduce that collaboration where you've got a clear vision over what you're trying to achieve. The other hint that I'll give you is make sure you understand the breadth of everything that you're trying to achieve, and then maybe the depth of the first thing that you're trying to deliver. The breadth will give you a vision of what the future application might look like. And in there, you can start building things that are reusable throughout the breadth of all the different requirements that are in there. Most of the time, you will identify patterns. You'll be able to see that this requirement actually is very similar to that other requirement. So how about I build it in a reusable manner rather than building it over and over again the same way? Or I noticed that there is a common requirement around all of them that require a specific capability. In the example of the Department of Internal Affairs, where we did the passport application processing, we realized that they have a lot of rules. So every time an application goes through different stages, it goes through a set of rules. Every time we identify a person, identity proofing service, we realize that there's actually a set of rules that will tell us whether that person is truly who they claim they are. So we thought, all right, well, doing rules in Power Automate or in business rules in Dynamics and Power Platform, or even writing plugins for it, may be a little bit heavy and difficult to maintain. There are third-party tools available out there for rules such as Note 52, InRule, and so on. But we thought, all right, well, none of those really fit what we're trying to do. Let's build a little engine that actually gives us all those rules capabilities, and let's make it so that it's driven by data. So our deployment is basically data deployment because the engine is built once and reused multiple times. It's relatively stable. We don't change the engine much, but then the rules change. So let's make sure that our deployments are basically just deploying rules. And also if there are levers that our customer would like to change. So for example, today we need to wait for 30 days, tomorrow we need to wait for 60 days, then all of that is data. All they have to do is just change that data and then deploy it. Or even if it's urgent, they can change it straight into the production environment if they have access to changing this information. So breadth is very important to identify the patterns and be able to build the solutions that you want. Moving on to the next step, let's talk a little bit about development. And this is something that I've spent the majority of my career in: development, build, and deploy. I'm a person who likes to get my hands dirty. I'm a .NET developer by heart. So a lot of the work that I've done has been in that space. And then we've seen a lot of progress in the space of development. But most recently, and this is no surprise, if you go to other sessions part of this conference, you will notice that there's a lot of conversations about AI. And AI is truly there to improve your productivity, not just from an end user perspective, where they can see summaries, they can see bullet points, they can see suggestions on next actions or supporting them with generating text, but it's also a tool that you can use to enhance your development. So I'm going to steal Ryan Cunningham's catchphrase, and he's going to say, ladies and gentlemen, meet Plan Designer. Plan Designer, meet everybody else. So Plan Designer is now in a private preview, but if you're interested in it, you can go and tap into that program and then start using Plan Designer. It's actually an amalgamation of all the natural language AI tools that have been introduced in the Maker portals, be it from a Power Automate perspective, from a data perspective, from an application perspective, and put into one place, where you can go in there and you can say, I'm trying to build this solution. And then based on that, it's going to automatically go and generate the majority of the work for you. And I've got a little demo to show you today. The next part that I wanted to demonstrate is the Git integration. So this is the one that was released in public preview earlier this week. It's enabled. I think today we had a call with the product team, and they said that as of today, it was released in the US geo area. It used to be only Australia, Canada, and Europe, I think. And then recently, today, it was released in US. So go and create a new environment. Make sure that that environment is marked for early access capabilities or features. There's a little tick box in there that allows you to create that request when you're building a new instance of your Dataverse environment. And then go to make.preview.powerapps.com. Ensure that you have preview in the middle between make and Power Apps. And then all of a sudden, you will see a little icon that says Git connection. And then the little icon on the left-hand side that allows you to see the state of the connection. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. So our demo is going to be about Plan Designer and the Git integration. So let's quickly swap to that. I might quickly stop sharing and then share my screen again. Okay, so let's have a look at Plan Designers. So we've got it open in here. So as you can see, I have gone to make.preview.powerapps.com. And this specific element in here is going to have a little prompt. So a little toggle in here that says, try the new Power Apps experience. And it will allow you to, just using a prompt, go and type the information that you have. So let's try and write something in here. So the prompt that I'm giving it is to create an evaluation engine solution, which is the one that I talked about earlier, and then store rules, actions, payloads, the things to do. And the solution would require a model-driven app and also require an administrator to administer or author the content. The rest of the users will have read-only access to the rules. Now, the one thing that I also want to show you is that not only can you write a prompt, but you can go and give it a process flow diagram, an ERD diagram, and so on. And when I do that, then it has all the information, all the context to start working on what needs to be done. And as I said, it's an amalgamation of all the different capabilities that are available out there today, but you can do it in one place. So the first thing that it's going to do is go and have a look at what sort of security roles and user personas are required to be using this specific application. So as you can see, it's looking like it's typing information, it's trying to figure out what needs to be done. But straight away, it followed my instructions and it said, right, you need an administrator. This is what the administrator can do, delete, edit, create, and so on. And then a general user will be able to do a little bit less than that. And then after that, we're saying, okay, well, now that we're done with that, let's have a look at generating the data context that we need. Now, the first iterations of Plan Designer did not understand my ERD diagram. But then I can tell you one thing is that whenever you provide feedback to Microsoft, they are listening. I actually sent a feedback form and I filled it up and I said, yep, I had some issues with my ERD diagram. It did not understand it, even though it was generated with a standard tool. And then, I said I would be more than happy to actually go and share that ERD diagram with you guys. And then within a day, I got an email back from the Microsoft product team saying, we would love to see your ERD diagram. We want to understand where does it not work. So they are listening and they are here to improve on those features to see how they can make things better and so on. So within a few seconds, we're going to see the generation of all the different tables, and we'll even be able to drill down into that data model and then we'll be able to have a look at the cardinalities between them. So as you can see, there's a bunch of tables that were created in here. I'm going to click on Show Details, and it's going to look very similar to what I've requested in there. So there's the evaluation group, there's the criteria, rules, actions, payload items, and so on. So this is just showing you how it actually understood everything that I said, including the cardinalities that were presented. And then beyond that, what I can also say is that you can drill down into each one of those tables and have a look at the attributes and schema behind it. And then once you're happy with that, then you move on with your process. And then the next capability is going to be around, do you want a Canvas app? Do you want a model-driven app? And then, you look at those and then you generate, or you have a look at how they're generated and so on. This is, again, existing capabilities. I'm going to skip the Canvas and model-driven app. But at the end, once you're ready and happy with all of that, then all you do is just accept all your changes, and then it will go and generate all of that for you. Now, think about a scenario where you've got an existing legacy application built in Access, for example, or Excel, or Lotus Notes, or any other non-Power Platform solution. And then you've got a large organization with hundreds of those. How are you going to convert them efficiently into a Power Platform component? Well, this is the solution for you. You can go there, you can just take screenshots, feed it into an ERD diagram, give it a description, point it to some documentation, and then generate it, or allow the platform to generate it for you, significantly improving on your performance and your speed. The other thing that I wanted to demonstrate is the capability to show you the source control integration. So as I mentioned in here, also I go to make.preview.powerapps.com. Again, this is public preview at the moment, so anybody can go and generate a new organization. As I said, make sure that you tick that little box that says available for early preview, and then you'll be able to see your changes in there. So where I am right now is in the maker experience, and I've got a solution called the 6th solution. So if I go back, there'll be a bunch of solutions in here. Some of them may be connected to Git, some of them may not be connected. As you can see in here, those are connected. Some of them are not supported because they were there before I started. And then as I go into my 6th solution, I'll be able, I've got someone messaging me. I can see that I've got on the left-hand side, the Git integration. And in here, as you make a change to your solution, you go into your environment. For example, let's say you've got an environment variable. I've got environment variable 2 and 3. I can go and create a new one. As you go and update your solution, you can go into your Git integration. You will see the changes that have been made. You can navigate to Azure DevOps to understand what has been done in there, but you can also go and say commit, and then type in the information in here and commit your changes into the Git solution in ADO. Now, this is not taking the entire solution. It's not basically doing an export-import. It's looking at the solution fragments, and it's turning them into a YAML format, which is human readable, and it's pushing it in there, which is significantly faster than any export and push into Git. So having a look at what that end result might look like. So this is my Azure DevOps environment, my Git source control. And as you can see, it generates all of that structure in here, and then it is in YAML format. Now, the one thing to note, YAML is human readable, as I mentioned. So you can go there, you can have a look at, this is an environment variable, this is the environment variable definition, and this is what, the variable is called, the default name, this is the description for it, and this is the default value for it, and so on. Which means that if you actually want to, you can go and create those code first. So rather than starting from your instance, which is the case right now, but once you have it synchronized with Azure DevOps, you can go and create new variables manually. You can define those folders, you can define a YAML fragment, you can populate the YAML fragment, you can save it, and then you can go back in here and you can say, all right, we'll check for updates. Those are the updates. Pull those updates into my environment, and you would refresh, rehydrate your environment with the changes that you've done manually in Azure DevOps. Now that opens up a world of possibilities. Imagine if you can define all your environments, if you can define all your tables, if you can define all your attributes in an Excel spreadsheet. You would put in a few information about the metadata. you would define what your data types would be for those specific attributes, and you would click a button that would read that Excel spreadsheet, generate the folders and the YAML fragments for you, and then go and populate your environment back to what it is. Because ultimately, at least the way we do the work in New Zealand, that we would start with understanding what the work is usually the business analyst and the functional consultant that would go and consult with the businesses, and they would go and populate the data dictionary, for example, that would have all this information already. And then we go and hand it over to a functional consultant that would read the data dictionary and then start building the schema. What if we can bypass that? Click a button, read this information, and generate it all into our environment. So all of those are techniques that can significantly improve on the way that we do our work on a day-to-day basis. All right, let me carry on. We're halfway through the conversation. So now I'm going to continue with my slide deck. So let me share again. Give me a second. All right, so we've done the demo on the Plan Designer and the Git integration. So next, let's move into the next element. So build and test your solution. So building, as I said, can be done in, if we're doing something like a plugin or a JavaScript customization, TypeScript even, all of that can either be done in your environment, in Visual Studio and VS Code. And then you have the compilation process and all of that. But what I'm focusing on today is having a look at that code-first story. And I'll show you about some of the exciting features that are available in the Power Platform today that can do that for you. All right. But one thing that I want to mention is that whenever we're talking about code, .NET specifically, or even JavaScript, we've got decades of experience in that space. And throughout those decades, many organizations have used those tools and thought, all right, well, how can we improve on that? How can we avoid bad quality implementations to go across the different layers? And what they've done over time is talked about static analysis. And they have tons of tools that are available out there that can do the static analysis for you on your code. Visual Studio has some that is available out of the box. SonarQube is famous for all the security assessment that it does. PowerSoft is the same. GhostDoc is around ensuring that you've done the documentation correctly. Even ReSharper has a lot of really cool tools that can give you upfront analysis as you're typing to tell you what you're doing wrong, be it in C# or in JavaScript. But then what is available in the Power Platform and Dynamics 365? The one thing that we do have is the solution checker. And the solution checker is evolving over time. There's a few versions of the solution checker, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But also, it is, I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to introduce our own rules, the way you do for ReSharper, for example, or Visual Studio, and then ask it to go and check specific quality controls element that would ensure that the quality is there or not. There's even automated testing that we can do. So if you are using Dynamics 365, this is something that I've recorded a long time ago, specifically for model-driven apps. So what it's actually doing is triggering what a framework called Easy Repro. Easy Repro is based on the Selenium capabilities that automatically open a browser and start clicking on things. So as you can see the age based on the navigation, and there we had the tiles back in the 2016 area. So it goes through all the different elements. It finds the specific records. It goes and updates the content, types in the information, saves the record, ensures that everything is working as expected. And it does that automatically. So you can write it once and run your tests multiple times. And that's really important because you want that consistency to happen over time. The one thing to note is that because it's a framework that is supported by Microsoft, that means as a new version comes out, then that framework is updated and you don't have to worry too much about, backwards compatibility and things like that. But then this covers model-driven apps. What about Canvas? Well, Canvas also has the Test Studio. It's a hidden feature. You really have to look for it to find it, but I'll demonstrate it and I'll show you where it actually is. So now let's have a look at another demo. And in there, we're going to talk about the Pack CLI. So the Pack CLI is the Power Apps command line interface. And it's capable of doing quite a lot of things straight from the command line. And I'm going to show you an approach where you can build a solution first, and then how you can go and check the solution quality, and then also make sure that we can also run our tests locally and so on. So let's quickly do that. I'm going to stop sharing again and share my desktop. Share the screen. All right, some information in here. Right, so I'm going to go into a command line interface, into the command prompt. So there's an empty folder in here. I don't have anything in it, but I do have the pack command line installed. So if I click on PAC, I've done a session on PAC in the past. I did one at the Power Platform Community Conference, but there's tons of information available out there. You can install it either using an MSI if you're using a Windows machine, or you can do it through the Power Platform Visual Studio Code and the Power Platform extension in there, or there are some other capabilities to do it in there. But anyway, the first thing that I want to do is go into Pack Solution. I do have a clicky keyboard, so I'm trying to minimize the amount of typing that I'm going to do. But as you can see, Pack has a bunch of different commands, and one of them is solution. And one of the things that I want to do is get it to actually build a solution for me. So when I say Pack Solution init, and then I say I need the publisher name, which is always required, and the prefix, then it takes this information and it goes and figures out what needs to be initiated from a solution perspective. All right, so as you can see, it said that the solution was already created. And then if I go on dir and then have a look at what is in there, as you can see, it created something called a CDS proj. So usually if you're doing C# code, you would be familiar with CS proj, so a C# project. This is CDS, the Common Data Services project, and it's a solution. There's also a source folder that includes a bunch of really useful information. So if we really go into my solution folder and then go to the source code, then those are the XML fragments that we're used to from a solution perspective. You can go and edit them manually, and then once you're ready, and then you're finished with all of that, you do an MS build. Now notice that I am doing MS build in here, so the command prompt that I'm using is actually the .NET command prompt, and that's why it understands when I'm saying MS build. And then that takes the command to go and build that specific project. So let's have a look at what was created. So it created the bin folder. Within that folder, there's an x86, and then there's a debug element. And if I do a dir in here, this is your solution.zip that can go all the way up into the Power Platform. You can deploy it in there, and it will have everything that you've done as a code-first approach. So notice, we haven't even created an environment. We started from scratch on the command line, and then we populated those fragments automatically. Now let's do another element in here, which is calling the solution checker on that specific solution that was just created. Now, given that it's an empty solution, it doesn't have much in it, it's not going to come back with any issues and so on. But notice what it's doing. It's actually connecting into powerapps.com. It already knows that I've entered my credentials in the past, and it knows how to get the information in there. It's uploading one file, and it's going through an iteration of doing the assessment check. It looked at where we are. We're at 20% complete right now. It will pause for 30 seconds, and it will wait. It's an asynchronous process, right? So it sends the solution up in there. And I'll zoom in a little bit in terms of what has been happening. So upload started, one file is there. This is the endpoint that it's using, and it has to do with advisor.powerapps.com, and it took that specific solution up into that environment. And then it will go and do the first set of assessments, and now 30 seconds after it's done, it's coming back and telling me, your solution looks good. There's nothing critical, nothing high, nothing medium. There's in fact nothing in it. So no changes in there. And then it generated a zip file. So this is the solution zip file that includes all the results of what I'm trying to achieve. And it's available as a hyperlink that is stored into Azure Blob Storage. So this is really powerful capability where you can automate some static analysis and then be able to see what's happening behind the scenes and so on. So the next thing that I wanted to do is just go into one of my environments. And I'm going to show you that I have a Canvas app that is available in there. Very simple Canvas app that I've created. So now we're going into the testing side of things. And I'm going to show you how you can get to the test automation behind those Canvas apps. So this Canvas app is very simple. I just type in some information into a rich text element. And then in that label, I take the content coming from that HTML content and then display it in there. So if I have test in here, it's going to show test in there. Now, on the left-hand side, there's nothing, or on the navigation at the top, there's nothing about testing. Unless you click on this ellipsis in here, and then you go to Advanced Tools, and in there, you will see the test capability. When you click on that specific button, it's going to take you into the Test Studio. Now, the Test Studio allows you to put in the commands on exactly what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, first, I want to load the screen, and then you'll be able to see that it has all the different capabilities in terms of loading, what starts first, what starts next, and so on. So this is on start, this is on complete, this is on suite complete, and so on. And then those are the inputs. So I'm saying, go and find me the rich text editor 1.html text, set the value to hello world, and then go and check that the text field is not blank. And then once I've put all of that, and if you don't know the coding and all of that, you can actually go and say, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to record that capability. And it does have recording capabilities that are available in there. You will see the record button at the top. But anyway, let's play that specific element. So let's go there. So as you can see, it's loading the application for us. It's going to start executing the elements on the left-hand side, starting from starting the test, checking whether the properties are correct, and so on. And it will give me green boxes on everything that I have done in here. So it generated hello world in that field and ensured that that other field was not blank. So very simple test. It can get significantly more advanced than that. And then you can give it proper names. I didn't bother doing that. You can give it proper references so that's available. And once you're done, you can click on Download Suite. And that will download everything that you have from that specific folder, and then you can run it locally. So going back to the pack, I actually downloaded that previously. So I've got a little folder called test. And as you can see, suite.fx.yaml, it's actually a collection of PowerFX capabilities that will tell the solution what to do. The one thing I really wanted to highlight very quickly, and then, because of that, we will have a failure shortly. You will notice in here that it will have a username and password so that it knows which persona to use while running that specific test. And that will require the credentials to be available in here. Now, those are not credentials. Those are actually environment variables that you can use with PowerShell. So in PowerShell, you have to go and define what those environment variables are. So use the username, email, and the password, and then you'll be able to run that correctly. But just for the purpose of this demo, I'll go back a few folders in here. And then the command that you can do to run that is pack test run -test or -t. And then you specify exactly what's your YAML code. And then you have your environment. And then you have -t for tenancy so that it knows what to connect to. And then you trigger it. Now, what that uses is a Selenium variant. And that actually opens up a ghost browser and then tries to execute that capability. As you're doing the different tests and running everything, you can run that locally or on the server in your DevOps or ALM solution, and then ensure that that quality is always there in terms of making changes to your Canvas app, which you can also do as a code first using YAML, and then pushing those changes and then ensuring that it does work as expected. And here you go. This is the solution and the results that came up. Now I'm going to go into the test output and just to show you what the folder actually generated. So this one in here is 7BD, which is that one in here. And it has the logs to understand what has gone wrong, but it also has the TRX, which is something that you can use for reporting purposes into Azure DevOps, into Visual Studio, and then have a look at how those are progressing, what are the things that are failing, and what needs to be done. So a lot of really powerful features that you can do with the pack CLI and the command line. All right. So now we're heading towards the tail end of the presentation. So again, I'm going to stop sharing and then share my other screen. Let's do that really quickly. So now we get to the deployment capabilities of the solution. And now that we've built everything and then we're happy with the content and the quality that we've got, typically what we would do is we would have a Dynamics or a Power Platform or Dynamics instance. We would run some unit tests associated with it and then deploy it manually. But then the experiment that I was showing you is to actually do that, try to do that locally, try to have a GitHub repository available, validate the content in there, generate the artifacts that we want. And then if you want to, you can automatically create, again with the pack CLI, a new environment, a fresh, clean environment that doesn't have that solution, automatically deploy that and then run a regression test into that environment. So this is something that we do quite often in our environments, especially for overnight builds. So every night we go and get all the solutions that we've been building during the day. We compile them, we generate artifacts, we do static analysis on them, and then we go and build a destination environment, a test environment for that. We deploy everything in the right order, we hydrate it with relevant data, and then we run our test automation suite to make sure everything is working as expected. The main tool are usually the Pack CLI and the Power Platform build tools that are available in Azure ADO. So you can use those for your automation and do all the work. Now, conscious of time, I'm probably not going to spend too much time just showing you what the solution release cycle looks like, but basically you have the Pack solution capability that would have a deployment set of commands where you can take a zip file and then push it into the environment that you want. And then finally, towards the end, before we actually complete that cycle, there's the operate, monitor, and learn. So this is with the ops part of DevOps, if you want. And then there are tons of tools that are available out there that keep getting better and better on an ongoing basis, where you can see what's happening in your platform, any errors that are happening, where are the culprits, especially if there's a plugin that is failing a lot, a Power Automate that has a lot of repeats or failures, and then you'll be able to visualize all of that in really comprehensive tools that are available part of the PPAC, the Power Platform Administration Center. So have a look at those and then get yourself familiar with them. If I want to go down into governance and operational and monitoring, that's a session by itself. So that's why I thought I'll just touch on it right now, just so that people are aware of those capabilities. So let's talk about the future of what we can do in that space. So let's talk about the full automation that we can envisage, part of all those tools that are available out there. Now, some of that is almost there, maybe not there yet, but that's something that, or the MVPs are giving a lot of feedback to Microsoft to make that happen. And it is on the roadmap in terms of the vision on how they want the platform to work. Starting from initiating your solution using YAML fragments, right? So as I did a solution init on the command line, you could see that it generated the XML fragment. We want that to be a YAML solution that you can go and automatically generate from a spreadsheet or from other capabilities. So Pack solution init followed by population of all the different content that goes in there. Once this is available, then we can make sure so that the conversion from an Excel spreadsheet into the YAML. And then once that is done, then we can pack the solution the way we did the MS build and have that zip file that is available in there. We would use the environment that initiates a new environment so that you have that clean slate in there. And then we would push that solution and be able to build the content in there and then be able to do that on an ongoing basis. That could even be not necessarily from a testing perspective, but also from a developer perspective where someone can do that on an ongoing basis without having to soil the the general or the main dev environment. So you would have multiple developers working, each with their own environment that they can tear down and then build up in no time. And we actually encourage that. We encourage people not to treat the environments as something precious, but something that can be thrown away and then recreated really quickly. And that way you can have consistency in how your solution is working and how your deployments and your development is working. And then you would use the Git integration to then bring it back into the main dev environment by doing a merge into the branch and understanding the different capabilities. And this is something that will happen in the near future. It is available today in some other shape and formats, so maybe XML rather than YAML, but you can do it, and then it's getting better and better and better over time. So that brings me to the end of my conversation. As I mentioned, it's all about thinking about your day-to-day workflow. How do you build your solutions? And what are the areas that are taking the longest amount of time and how you can improve on that, how you can make it better and how you can make it faster as well while maintaining the quality that you're expecting in there. And the same message that are available in the AI community, where they're saying it's not about taking people's jobs away, but it's about taking the mundane away and allowing you to focus on the things that an automated system cannot do. the mundane tasks that can be automated, push those into automation, and focus on the more interesting things like understanding the business logic, building the complex Power Automates, writing code, and refactoring your code in a way that is efficient. This is where your time is worth being spent. With all of that, here are a few resources that might be of interest to you. So most of them are from the learn.microsoft.com. There's one on Microsoft Docs around ALM, which is quite interesting on the sort of overall capabilities. And if you're interested to connect with me or you have any questions, feel free to contact me on any of the social channels that are in there. I'm usually most active on LinkedIn, and on my YouTube channel, I do have a lot of content related to what I've been talking about in here. With that, thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now, and I'll go into the chat side to see if there's anything in there. If there are any questions, feel free to mention them in there. Otherwise, one of the common questions that I usually get is, in terms of how much overhead does it take to actually generate the content that we've got in there, and how much investment is required to get things up to speed and so on. So in situations like that, I would say, think about what is your team composition is looking like, how big is your team, and how much investment you want to spend in there. So it's quite a common thing. If you have larger projects, I would strongly suggest that you spend more time trying to fine-tune the way you do your work, and also fine-tune the way your speed and the quality of the deliverables that you've got. If it's a really small project that is only going to take a few weeks, maybe going that far into it is a bit of an overkill. So take that into consideration. Sometimes, manual deployments are okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, if it's something that is bigger, then consider doing that. I would strongly suggest that you guys go and have a look at those private previews. This is our bread and butter, right? So if there's something new and then you want to be the latest and the greatest in that space, go and follow the MVPs on LinkedIn. Listen to all the public previews and private previews that are being delivered in that space, and then tap into it. The moment you do that, then what you will notice is that there is actually a channel for you to get closer to the Microsoft team and to shape the way that projects is going to turn. And I think this is one of the most humbling things about being an MVP, is that when you go and provide feedback to Microsoft and you ask them in terms of, hey, how about we do it this way? Or how about we change this to do X and Y? And then a few months later, your suggestion is now live and people are using it. And it's a very humbling experience to actually be able to do that. So that's why I strongly encourage you guys to work on that, and then to provide feedback. If you don't want to go, the whole 9 yards and be involved with Microsoft, then feel free to connect with the MVPs. They're listening, and then they are there to amplify your message and send it back to Microsoft. Chances are that your feedback has been provided in the past, but your feedback is going to be that +1 vote that may make it from a, this is lower priority to this is higher priority. So keep the feedback coming. And yeah, experiment as much as you can. Have a look at, think outside of the box. Don't think about what's available today, but think about what can we do to improve the existing solutions, and then get to build something a little bit better. With that, that's the end of my session. There's 5 minutes to go, so I'll give you 5 minutes back, and hopefully, you guys can take a break before the next session.